seen some good years, some bad years. I think we can definitely say this is one of the best years. Unfortunately, we just don't have the acres. But like Dr. Lofton did say, we had some issues this year that we've seen from year to year. Old canola breeder, Charlie used to call it the crud. If you look down there at that base of that stem, or the top of the taproot, and slice it in half vertically, you can see that kind of hollow heart, or kind of big void where it looks like some disease or a maggot or something got in there. A lot of that we still don't know physiologically what's causing it. It's just some years are worse than others. We don't know if maybe we had one of those early fall freezes. We had some splits in that crown, and we had some secondary infestations from diseases that kind of kept that going. And sometimes we might later on get some maggots or something come in, but we don't know what initially causes that crud, that swollen top of the taproot where that crown is. We have seen some of it this spring progress pretty rapidly. If you have a good thick stand, you know, something that you can't personally walk through, more than likely it's still going to be supported enough that's going to finish out. It still has those cells on the outer side of that stem that's going to support it enough and still get the water and nutrients to fill that seed. But if we do get some big storms come in, we might have some lodging issues. Another thing I think Dr. Lofton will get into later, but we had some stem damage later this spring from that last freeze we had. We had some canola that was very benefit of some water, so we had good moisture content in that stem. And those freezes might have split some stems, so you might see some scars on those stems. Only one year we had significant damage from that. That was over by Okeen several years ago, where we had some black rot come into those open scars. But for the most part, they've healed over. Like I said, you're not going to see a yield penalty from it. But those stems we got laid out over there, I think Dr. Lofton will go more into that. But like I said, that's more superficial. We're not losing any yield on that. The crud, depending on how severe it was, we've seen some fields where we might lose maybe a third of our crop just because that plant is stressed. It's not getting the full flow of water and nutrients to it. Like I said, later on when we start getting full weight on the top of that canopy, like right now, we might have more lodging issues. And then at the very tail end, we might have rapid maturation where the crop matures prematurely. So once we start getting into this heat this summer, late spring, we'll see some of those crops terminate faster than what we might expect. So have your harvest plan ready to see if we need to terminate that crop with either a swather or a desiccant to get it out in a timely fashion, or if it's a nice even stand, nice even crop and maturity, we might be able to harvest a little sooner than we thought. So as of right now, most of the crop, I think, wheat and canola are doing pretty good. I'm foreseeing maybe canola, with the way it's already past peak bloom, we might have an early canola harvest this year. So we might be benefit to get the canola out of the field before our wheat's ready. So that'd be one positive. Just make sure you have your harvest plans ready for that. Do we have any questions about the crud or that swollen stem, that top of the crown or the taproot? Everyone's just enjoying the rain. We're gonna start dancing. Obviously this rain is probably going to be enough to finish this crop out. Like I said, we're past peak bloom, so we're just filling those last few pods. Most of us know the bottom third is the oldest, the top of the stem is the youngest. So we're getting a pretty good raceme fill. We didn't really have many freezes this spring, so we have a pretty complete raceme. So the yield potential is there. We should be able to finish out just fine as long as we don't have any good storms come in. Do we have any questions about weed control or any issues? Is anyone growing non-Roundup Ready canola? Everyone's Roundup Ready? Having issues with Roundup? Just like any crop, a good canopy is going to be very beneficial for those winter broadleafs, whether it's winter or summer. A lot of our grasses, they can come out of that shade more than we'd like to see. So sometimes we do have those late emerging ryegrass or rye come up later, and we have more grasses out there than we thought we did. So a good canopy is definitely going to help with those annual broadleafs. So a good canopy is going to help with that. Biggest thing I saw this year is we had a lot of Roundup and top dress go out pretty late. So we started to hit bolting stage earlier than guys anticipated. It was later than average, but back when we had some good years, going back a few years coming out of winter with moisture, I'd say we're on par with maturity, but those rain events probably kept some of us out longer than we wanted to. So Dr. Lofton and I and our weed scientist, Misha Cherry, and our previous weed scientist, Dr. Angela Post, we've done a lot of work looking at those late herbicide applications. If you look at the label, how late can we spray Roundup? 6 leaf, all right? So what kind of yield reduction are we getting from those late herbicide applications? On our trials, we saw upwards of maybe 10 bushels per acre. And that's at late bolting, early bloom stage. So once you see that bud cluster, even before it starts to bolt, it's too late. You're going to have some yield reduction. It's just whether it's going to be 1 bushel or 15 bushels, it's just going to depend on the year. That's just going to be another stress for that canola to process and metabolize. So that's another stress. If you have complications with drought or heat, it's just going to be amplified. So make sure we get those herbicides out before we see those little bud clusters when it's still in the rosette stage. So after spring green up, but before we start bolting to get those herbicide applications on. Like I said, unless your main goal is to clean up that field, we highly advise not to do those late herbicide applications, especially once we start getting into bloom. We do have some new genetics coming called TrueFlex, which might open the application window up a little bit more. But with the current varieties we have, that's going to be a reduction on yield with those late herbicide applications. Unless you just have a solid mat of winter annual grasses, whatever you might be having, cheat, ryegrass, jointed goat grass, rye, oats, rescue grass, so on and so forth. If you really need to clean up that field, I'd still spray, but if you're after a good canola crop, I'd suggest wait until after harvest. So Dr. Misha Cherry, our small grains weed scientist, is doing some herbicide work in canola, looking at the product warrant with Bayer, seeing if they can get that labeled in canola. They're working on that. It's not quite labeled yet, but that's going to give us a to maybe give us some options. Her work has shown that we haven't, for most of our broadleaf weeds, it's not doing a lot for us, but for those guys that are non-Roundup ready, that's going to be another tool in the toolbox to use. But we are still looking at some other options, but it'd be nice to get some yellows or something like that. We've looked at dual in the past and stuff, but even Trifluralin pre-plant incorporated does some benefit for us, but obviously not a lot of us are tillage anymore, so that's not a good option for a lot of guys. But even that, I've seen reduced stands of 40%, but you just don't notice it when you have a whole field of it. So there are some options out there. You got a lot of grass products, graminicides, you got Select, Assure, Post. Those are just going to control grasses. But if you are fighting issues with Roundup, more than likely it's going to be a broadleaf weed, and that's not going to help you either. Stinger, I've never been too impressed with myself, especially for the price of it, but it is another broadleaf option with Stinger. Preventative wise, we've looked at it. Like I said, it's not every year, but every now and then environmental conditions favor it. I don't know if it's those early freezes we have that damage that crown, or if maybe we have early insect feeding, Dr. Royer, something that damages that crown and lets that take hold. Dr. Damicone, our plant pathologist, has been looking into it, and he's still scratching his head as far as I know. Some years we never see it, some years we do. Like I said, our earliest canola breeder for the region, Charlie Rife, who's developed Wichita and Sumner, he tried to screen for it, but it's one of those things where if you don't see it every year, it's hard to get the genetics for it. But I think he saw a little bit of genetic difference between those, so that'd be something Dr. Damicone will probably look at post-harvest and look at those crowns.